Aloha everyone, Ronnie Landis here, and welcome to yet again another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. I am your host, as always, Ronnie Landis, and also the founder of the Holistic Health Mastery Nutrition Certification Program. If that wasn't a mouthful, this is a fully comprehensive and integrative approach to all areas of natural nutrition. Raw food nutrition, plant-based nutrition, superfood nutrition, tonic herbal nutrition, environmental nutrition, being the elements that we are living with each and every day, and getting the nutrition of our environment, of the elements of nature, hormone nutrition, brain nutrition, detoxification and cleansing principles and protocols, and so much more. If you want more information on that, go to holistichealthmastery.com. And today's show, wow. This is one of the archived shows from my previous podcast almost 3 years ago. And this show was so phenomenal for so many reasons to me. One of them is because this individual was one of the very first people that I tuned into 7 years ago or so. I tuned into David Wolfe, I tuned into Paul Chek, I tuned into Dan McDonald, the Life Regenerator, and then I stumbled across this individual on his YouTube videos, and I was so profoundly impressed and inspired by his sharings, his transparency, his authenticity of sharing his journey that he was going through raw foods and through cleansing and transforming himself through the nutritional technologies that were starting to allow him to permeate a higher state of consciousness and awareness. And that really inspired me. So many years later, we had been connecting with one another, and we had become friends and colleagues. And up to this point now, far after the interview, we've become very good friends and have spoken on many occasions, hung out on many occasions when available. And it's always a joy and pleasure. Now, this individual, by the way, is Marcus Patrick. And this interview was so great. We went into so many avenues of how really adopting a plant-based approach, or even a high raw plant-based approach, can transform every aspect of your full faculties, your mental, your emotional, your physical and spiritual faculties. The integrative factor of that through nutrition, through cleansing yourself of toxic residue of the standard American diet, of really walking more of a purification path for some point in your life, how that's revolutionized his life and just the journey that he's been on, from being a Hollywood actor, being a model, being a prize fighter, which we totally shared in common, and talk more about the martial arts aspect of all this. But what an amazing interview. What an amazing discovery of consciousness. And I really am excited for all of you that are about to listen to this. So I'm going to let you go with it. I want to introduce Marcus Patrick. Enjoy. Hey everybody, this is Ronnie Landis. Welcome you to another edition of the Expanded Health and Human Potential radio show. So today, my guest is someone that I'm really excited to bring on. I'm always excited to bring on people to the show, because I never, ever bring on anyone that I don't feel is not only exceptional, but is doing incredible work in the world and has literally transformed themselves. That's the point of this whole radio show. So the gentleman that I have is actually one of the first people that inspired me, I think like almost 5 years ago, to get into raw foods. Not just to get into it, but to see someone who was a prime example of what I was going for at the time, which was professional athletics and I think a lot of us are in this field. We get kind of boggled down by the mainstream advertising, and we kind of feel that we can't develop our full potential on a plant-based, let alone a raw food approach. And this is one of the individuals that has completely broken that mold wide open. So without further ado, I want to bring on Marcus Patrick.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Well, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it, and I'll do my best to share what I can that will help anybody on the journey.
Yeah, right on. So, like I said before, I'm really excited about this, and you were one of the first people I found on YouTube that wasn't just talking about it, wasn't just educating about it, but you were able to integrate this information into your life for your needs. I mean, you were a long-term athlete, bodybuilder. I mean, I'm sure you'll give the whole download, but just to have that the physicality to go with the knowledge was such a powerful thing for me as a catalyst to show that, hey, you know what, you really can do this if you do it intelligently and you educate yourself on it.
Well, yeah, it's a combination of being really humble and sensitive and venturing down a pathway which requires somewhat of an arrogance, because to some degree you're trailblazing.
Right.
And anybody who's really going down this raw pathway at this stage is still kind of trailblazing, because they don't really know. No one really knows. All we have is a number of people out there who have popped up and showcased maybe some exceptional health or anti-aging benefits from changing from the normal dietary pattern that everyone else in the mainstream is following, and by eating lots of living food and refraining from flesh or animal cruelty, you've suddenly noticed that, there are a few people walking the earth that you're like, well, they have this exceptional health or glow. But there hasn't really been one dogmatic approach as to how to do it. And there hasn't really been big companies doing scientific research and promoting this way of living, because ultimately this way of living kind of will destroy a corporate structure. So a science program that is funded by a cereal company or a dairy company are going to always endorse people to buy those type of products. And you're not going to have too many farmers running out trying to teach you how to eat produce and using science. It's just common sense that is good for you. So most of us who are wandering down the pathway to raw veganism are going to have to do a lot of self-discovery, and there are only a few people out there that are really glowing positive examples of what this lifestyle can do. And I've been on the game now 5 years raw and 13 years vegan, and that has started to lend me, even to myself, a little bit of credibility that, okay, I'm clearly on the right path for myself because of the way I feel, how strong I feel. And ironically, the older I get, the more credibility I lend myself for being on this program. Because as I reach closer to 40 and my agents and managers submit me on roles for a 25-year-old, I begin to realize that it was when I was 25, 26, when I changed from the normal acid toxic diet over to a vegan diet, that I almost stopped the clock at that age. And that's why I'm still submitted for the roles that are at the age when I was being toxic, because it's almost like you reverse age on this diet. And I've especially seen it in my wife. Alyssa is turning 49, and she looks remarkably young and glowing and healthy and strong, and she continues to get better, younger, sexier. And so for me, obviously, being that I'm a personal trainer as well, she was so keen to do the training and do the diet with a joy. It's not so much strict discipline; it's a joy. That she's like the greatest project to have for a trainer, because you're like, well, let me see how far you can go, how much of a superhero I can make you. So she and I have a lot of fun when we're training in the gym together, because it's always amazing to me how strong she can be as she gets close to 50, or how glowing and radiant and beautiful she looks. I'm just like, wow, you look like Storm from the X-Men. You know what I mean? and it's like, I'm like, I can't believe she's my best buddy and wife, but it's just an amazing thing to see something somewhat materialize in front of your face, which is normally depicted in comic books or only in films like X-Men that Hollywood will put lots of smokescreen mirrors and special effects towards. So what this journey into higher, I would call it higher consciousness of ingestion, is really doing for us is a basic like pioneering of what's possible for humankind. We are really just children learning how to take better care of ourselves. And with the popularity of shows like Dr. Oz, which, believe it or not, I will TiVo to see what he's giving out to the mainstream. It's funny because a lot of what Dr. Oz will tell people to try and prescribe, and increasing fruits and vegetables, is kind of like the kindergarten baby steps towards.
Yeah.
It's the kindergarten baby steps towards this more radical lifestyle, which is to eat, all plant-based foods. And so the human race is trying to improve, clearly, because a show like Dr. Oz wasn't on TV 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it's now on, and he has to be of the type of sort of politically correct.
Yeah. He has to fit that mold in order to bridge it.
Exactly. He can't go too radical for the masses because it will create an allergic reaction. Mm-hmm. Which is something I've often created, because my personality is impatient and A-type. And when I go for something, I don't waste much time. Like, it's not a big deal for me to be looking next week or 2 weeks from now to be squatting 700 pounds, because I squatted 655 last week. And I'm thinking, well,
yeah,
that's just normal for me. But that's kind of abnormal for most people's minds. It's an extreme athlete mindset. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that can come across as a little like nuts, radical, or unrealistic. So you need somebody who is making it more realistic to your average office worker to be able to make incremental improvements or baby steps.
Yeah, you know what? I think you touched on some very key principles and concepts. One thing I want to elaborate on with you is that I was on the phone with a previous interview with Julie Wilson, and she's the formulator of that product Hot Rocks. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, and we got into this conversation, and her whole thing was that this product is just a Trojan horse. It's just a bridge to get this concept over into the mainstream. It's interesting. I find in our community, a lot of times we find ourselves kind of preaching the gospel, and it doesn't always permeate outside of that field. And if we're going to expand this into the mainstream, we have to be malleable. We have to be able to speak different languages at different times.
Exactly. Especially for myself, like, I work in an industry, believe it or not, now, where I'm in probably the most toxic environment that one can be in, because working for Hollywood men or being a dancer slash stripper or in acting, you're around people that are interested in the complete opposite of health. It's not such a big deal for those individuals to drink until they're comatose or try drugs, GHB, ecstasy. They really could care less about what they're eating or consuming. And if I have a conversation with them and say, are you aware how bad cigarettes, GHB, steroids, or cocaine is for you? And they're like, yeah, man, I know it's bad for me, but rock on. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Those individuals, and some of them are the nicest people. So I've learned, look, we can't run around trying to force feed the human race to evolve towards health if 50% of them aren't interested. You see, the human experience is a very personal experience between the self and the divine. And the more I've meditated on the divine, the more I've looked at the fact that the divine universe is both light and dark in almost equal quantities. You got to recognize the fact that if you look at the amount of sunlight and starlight there is in the universe, there's just as much, if not more, darkness. And that is the representation of our Father that is the universe itself, or our Mother that is the universe herself. And I often just call it an it, because, the universe is both male and female or neither. But when you then take a look at what is human consciousness, it is then going to be the mirror of the father-mother figure, which is we are both light and dark as human being. Because we are a universe. We are a miniature universe given birth into the macro universe. So inside of a human being exists both light and dark, and what they choose to do with their darkness is their own personal journey between them and the divine universe, and we have to respect it. So when I'm around some people who are like, dude, I love you, man, you're all healthy and everything, but shit, man, like, don't you ever just get bored and want to do some like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, dude? I mean, I'm having such a blast. And I'm laughing, thinking, wow, that's funny. He is, whoever that character is having a blast at life. And he's quite within his rights to do that. And who am I to tell him otherwise? Unless he chooses to go, I've had enough of that dark fun. I really want to turn my life around. And, you seem to have ventured down this other pathway. Could you share a few ideas with me? And I'm like, sure, buddy. But otherwise, I don't want to preach to people who ain't interested in the pathway towards, greater levels of health and wisdom. I really have no time for it. Like, good luck, enjoy yourself. And, if you end up in jail or you end up, dying young as a result of living life on the edge, then it's unfortunate, because here's the thing. Just because someone's experimenting with darkness doesn't necessarily mean that they're a complete evil person. It can be very unfortunate when we know that we have a friend, a loved one who, kind of has a bit of an addiction to something dark, and then they end up passing away young, and we're like, what a shame. Yeah. We love that. We love that person, despite their flaws. We're human too, because you know why? At some point in our lives, we were doing something stupid until we woke up and saw the light. And we probably are still doing something stupid. In comparison to an alien species that have already grown up through this particular juvenile stage that the human race is in, we are probably looked at as absolute asinine idiots by an advanced species. They would look at us like, what the hell are they doing? And if you look at a lot of science fiction films, even the current Superman movie that's out, there are hidden messages in there by the writers, and these writers are brilliant because they're tapping into things that are potential realities just as science fiction of the 60s has now become science fact.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine a race of beings like the beings that were depicted by Superman on planet Krypton and his father, well, these alien beings that look no different to us as humans may have simply discovered how to preserve the stem cell, which current science today in our real world, not hokey pokey quantum physics, we're talking the physics that is generally accepted as very credible and logical, is saying that the stem cell is immortal. And we have pretty factual evidence that when you see stem cells going from generation to generation, your great-grandmother and your great-grandfather and each child that comes out is basically taking the stem cell from the parent and moving on with it and creating more life. Well, once we as a human species learn that we are basically reproducing cells on a daily basis from an immortal stem cell, but we stop destroying that stem cell with daily toxicity, we have no idea what might be the limit. It might be that the human species is capable of living 10,000 years, like this superhuman race that's depicted in these fictional novels, Superman.